Good, Michael?
Yeah.
All right. This is the Provo Municipal Council work session, and it is 2 o'clock, Tuesday, February 6, 2024. And we will have the elected officials introduce themselves.
Carrie Garrett.
Becky Bachman. Catrice McKay. Rachel Whipple.
George Hamlin. And Craig Christensen.
Although this is a public meeting, only the presenters and those invited by the council may speak or ask questions, unless otherwise invited by the chair. Please wait to speak until called on by the council chair. When speaking, please be sure to use a microphone so that the record is clear and those attending virtually can hear you. Please also be sure to limit side conversations as they interfere with the audio recording. If you have a side conversation, please step out of the work meeting room. Now I see that we have some microphones. Do you want to tell us about these, Justin?
Yeah, so just quick update for everyone. We've been working on the audio in this room. You'll see a couple of gooseneck mics. They are pushed to turn on. You'll see the light when they're hot, and then you can push to turn on. So very similar to in the council chambers. It is the opposite with the kind of flat mics. If you hold them, they'll go quiet. So if you need to have a side conversation, just hold on to that button. We're working on getting it changed so they all match. But for now, I think this will help with some of our background noise, at least on the recording side.
Okay, but in the end, we'll have these off unless we turn them on.
No, these are on.
Those are on. We're gonna get rid of them.
We're working on getting them reprogrammed so that they'll be off and they'll be pushed to
Perfect.
touch.
Okay,
But for
that's
now,
great.
they're on,
Okay,
push to mute.
all right, so it's in process, folks.
All right.
He's not here on yet.
Can we adjourn now?
It is proposed we approve the following minutes. November 14th, 2023 council meeting, January 23rd, 2004 council meeting, January 23rd, 2024 work meeting. Are there any objections or requested changes?
No.
Seeing no objections, I declare this approved by unanimous consent. All right, our first item, we are expecting Travis to join us online, so we will be notified when he joins us. Our first order of business is a discussion regarding a resolution transferring money from the general fund to the airport fund for an interfund loan payment to energy. And this will be presented by John Borgett, our Director of Administrative Services.
Who is not here.
Oh,
Brian,
right.
do you want to do your best stretch
You will?
presentation on this?
We'll just go to number 2.
Is that okay?
Yeah, a discussion regarding the East Bay Shopping Center sales tax reimbursement agreement. It's the 4th payment, and it'll be presented by Keith Mooring, our Development Services Assistant Director.
Thanks for letting me come meet with you. Can you hear me okay?
Could you turn that on, please, Keith?
Pardon?
Can you turn the microphone on, please? I think it's,
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. So then there's 3 of these to talk about, and I can talk about them individually, but conceptually, they're all the same. So let me kind of start with this one. Several years ago, Provo City entered into sales tax reimbursement agreements with several different retail shopping areas. And the thought at the time was that this first one was done in 2016, that we partner with the owners of those retail strip areas, those centers, and agree that if they were going to make a certain amount of investment, reinvestment in that, so new facades, new lighting, maybe new signage or whatever, that would hopefully increase the potential sales tax for that area, and that if they were willing to make a certain investment, we would share back a portion of the increase in the sales tax that they could potentially generate. So it's basically an agreement that if you perform, we're willing to share back, but if nothing happens, we don't owe you anything. So our sales tax amount that we would collect would stay the same, but if every year they can show that there was an increase as a result of their improvements, then we would share back a portion of that to them for a period of time. So, for example, the Parkway Village one was done in 2016. The agreement that we had with them was that they were going to make just a little over $2 million worth of improvements, $2,100,000 worth of improvements. And the base year that they had, there was about $136,000 of sales tax that we assumed. And so then we would look every year at the sales tax numbers that we get from them, and if there was an increase, we would share a portion of that back. So this is the 5th year that we've done that. It's a 10-year agreement, and this year we would owe them $84,794. So just to be clear, these are commitments or contracts that we've already agreed to and we've already entered into. And so every year we simply come to you to let you know what the sales tax numbers have reflected for this year. And that's kind of how we make sure that we're staying current on it, that we've done an actual audit to reflect the fact that they have performed in a way that they would be deserving of a reimbursement, but not to revisit the contract because we already have a commitment to pay. It's just a matter of how much are we going to pay this year. So that's what each of these three are. And to me, out of all the partnerships that we do, even tax increment financing, these have been some of the most productive things we've ever done, because out of the 4 areas that we've invested in, every one of them has significantly increased the amount of sales tax that they produce for Provo City. So it's been an incredible win-win for us. I don't know if there's any questions or if that's.
I'm just gonna recognize real quick that Travis is online with us. Notice, go through it, and I think, like, go through all 3.
Sure.
Do you have to call out each one, Justin?
We're not gonna approve them today, so
Right.
it's just the work session, so I
So
can
we
just tell you
can
what the
just
amounts
go
are
over-
for each one of them.
Yeah, I think you can just let the public know that we'll be going through items 2, 3, and 4.
All right, Keith is gonna go through items 2, 3, and 4 now, and we're not gonna individualize them.
So again, just so that we're clear, Parkway Village, we entered into in 2016. It's a 10-year agreement. This is the 5th payment, and this year's amount that we owe to them is $84,794. Shops at Riverwood is another one that we've done. That one was done in 2021. That agreement was that if they would spend $9,194,000 in improvements to kind of upgrade that facility, that whole retail area, that we would share back a portion to them. And the amount that we owe them this year is $41,979. It's the 2nd year for them. The other one that we're considering, or that I'm sharing with you, is the East Bay Shopping Center, which is on South University, across kind of the mall to the east. That was entered into in 2016 as well. In that area, the developer, the owner of that, agreed they would make about $2,308,000 worth of improvements. This is the 4th payment that we are making to them, and this year we would owe them $59,113. So again, to me, it's a reflection of a great partnership and a great way to make sure that these retail areas are alive and thriving, and that the owners are reinvesting, and we keep those current. I mean, you can see the difference between when you make those kinds of investments and when you let them lag. I mean, over time, I think the old Plum Tree Plaza, because those kinds of investments weren't made, and that's what finally led us to have to do a total kind of redo of that whole project area. So if you're constantly making these kinds of reinvestments, I think this is the kind of turnaround you would see. Now, unfortunately, 2 years ago, the state legislature eliminated this opportunity. So we won't be doing these anymore, because the state said that cities are no longer allowed to incentivize large box retail developments. We've lobbied and continue to lobby that that's a mistake. And we think that there's good evidence for why it's a mistake, but so far that's where we are. So
Just large box or any retail?
anything over 30,000 square feet, you can't incentivize it anyway. Yeah. Any questions? Is that clear? Please.
Gary Garrett.
One question, Keith, is I read through the East Bay summary. I was trying to remember, because it says for the remodel, construction, and opening of a new Ross retail store. I'm trying to remember if there was a Ross or if they're still
No, I
planning to
think that was one of
build.
the intentions, was that they were trying to accomplish that. That hasn't ever played out.
Okay.
But having said that, the other improvements that they made
Wait, the
did.
East Bay has a Ross.
Yeah.
East Bay does have a
It
Ross.
did-
Yeah,
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 it did
yeah.
stimulate
I
the
need-
My son
development.
loved it. Yes.
A question.
Okay.
So
Great,
it
Christensen.
seems like most of these don't recover the target reimbursement amount.
That's correct.
So like with, Village Parkway, it's about, $1 million, their 5-year total is about 230. Is that typical that they don't actually achieve the total target amount?
Exactly. And I mean, basically, we kind of set with them a cap on what they could potentially get, recognizing that they would have to kind of really overperform, which we love if that would happen. But that way we're kind of capped so that it's not kind of this limitless pool of money that we're drawing down for them. It's clear to when we make these deals that, we'd love to have them overperform, but they recognize that they probably wouldn't, and we recognize that they wouldn't. And it's just kind of a good faith handshake partnership from our perspective that we're in this with you and we're trying to help as much as we can. And frankly, from my perspective, I hope you know the tools that we have, especially in Provo City, to partner and to work with our businesses is pretty limited. We don't have a big pool of money that we typically have to do these kinds of things. So the fact that we were able to make use of these in a way that's returned such a great benefit, I think, is outstanding. I'd like maybe next we can do more, and hopefully we get that legislation changed with the states so we can.
Any other questions for Keith? All right, thanks, Keith.
Thanks.
All right, we're gonna go back to number 1. A discussion regarding resolution transferring money from the general fund to the airport fund for an interfund loan payment to energy. And it was presented by John Borgett, the Director of Administrative Services.
Thank you. Appreciate having the opportunity to come forward with this. I just mentioned, I'll just kind of read this resolution and kind of give you some background. On April 12th, on April 21st, 2020, the Municipal Council approved a resolution authorizing an interfund loan between the airport and the energy fund for $4,900,526. It was set at a variable rate equal to the Utah Public Treasury Fund. Now, the whole idea behind that was to provide an opportunity for energy to not be harmed by this loan, and that they would get the same interest had they had the money in the state pool. The loan would be paid back with airport revenues, but if revenues were not sufficient, a transfer would be made from the general fund for all or a portion of the payment. And I just mentioned here that we're going to spend some time sharing some background information with you, but the airport is currently not in a position to make all or a portion of the payment, so we are recommending a transfer from the general fund of $665,325, and of that, $490,000 is principal. A little bit higher this year just because interest rates in the state pool are about 5.5%, and so it's increased there. And so I want to give a little bit of a background on the airport. We also have Brian Torgerson, who's going to kind of give you a little operational update, particularly with revenues in just a minute. But a couple things I would mention. I went back and just did a little bit of review. In our 2024 budget, we had for the first time in potentially ever, but at least for an extended period of time, we had a balanced budget where the airport was self-sufficient in budget revenues and expenses. Back in 23, we had the general fund transferred $894,000 to the airport to cover their operations. In 2022, year before, they covered $225,148, and then in 2021 they covered $141,411. So the airport has made some significant progress. I would also let you know that in the 2024 budget, not only did they have a balanced budget, but they actually included and paid $712,097 for public safety costs, and that basically is the fire department for being there for the potential of an event, as well as police providing public safety there. And so significant progress in the 2024 budget. Also, just mention that as we look at the current year, and as Brian's going to come up and give you a little bit of an update on that, we have and are experiencing additional public safety wages and overtime that we didn't anticipate, just because of the, number one, we're learning more about the operation of the airport at this level, and also because of increased flights and whatnot, that we have experienced more overtime, but we do feel like we're going to be able to cover that as well. But with that, what I would like to do is just turn the time over to Brian for a few minutes to give you kind of a revenue operational update for 2024, and then we can fill any questions you might have.
Thanks, John. We'd also like to recognize, is this working, Justin? Yes. Okay, we'd also like to recognize that the mayor's joined us.
Perfect. Thanks, John. Just by way of introduction, I think I know most of you, have met most of you, but Brian Torgerson, Director of Provo Airport. You've all heard kind of the stories that we're so proud to share. Specifically in December, we welcomed our 1 millionth passenger through our new building, which for Provo Airport is pretty significant. So we're proud of that. Things are going as well as we could have ever expected. In fact, better. Some of you may have seen the chart that shows our projections versus reality, and that's exciting to us. So as we talk about this, we understand the responsibility of the council to guard the general fund, and so we anticipated there might be some questions as to, hey, if the airport's doing so well. So we wanted to address that just a little bit and maybe share some background as to what keeps me up at night related to the budget. And hopefully that offers some insights as to why John's recommending what he is with this transfer. So like I say, operations are high, our revenues are high. We anticipate a fairly significant surplus in revenue again this year. Some of that, like John mentioned, will go towards covering budget that we didn't anticipate. And there's a number of things. John mentioned public safety, overtime. We spent a lot of time during last budget season as well as since then talking about our ARF responsibilities at the airport and how the approach we were taking was a careful, slow approach. And so that's part of what we're seeing is with the increase in operations, we are inching ever closer to that requirement to have additional ARF capabilities at the airport. With that, we have part of the way we're handling that in an efficient manner and not just putting firefighters at the airport, sitting for waiting for nothing to happen, right? As we're training airport staff to fill those responsibilities. That's an expense that we hadn't planned for. It's about $6,500 to outfit and train each airport employee. So that's one that we're trying to absorb in our current budget. I think we'll be able to do that, but just something that you need to be aware of. We are hit all the time with unfunded mandates by our friends at the TSA and the FAA. Specifically in the last year, given our level of employments, we crossed a threshold with the TSA where we are now required to screen aviation workers, not just passengers. And so in the good old days, if you had an airport badge, you could get about where, if you had the right color of badge, the right access, you could get about anywhere you wanted to without being hassled by anybody. The airport, not TSA, is responsible now to screen aviation workers. So anyone entering the secured or sterile area of the airport, it's set up on a random basis, has to be screened. So that's an expense that was not anticipated during the budget. So it's about $140,000 a year that we're, again, absorbing into our current budget. Another one, last time I stood before you, we presented a list of projects that, that 2023 revenues afforded us to do that were long overdue. Some of those we've now got final costs on. Those were quite a bit more expensive than anticipated. Several of those have actually been put on hold because we had an emergency purchase of a runway broom that we had to make to keep our runway clear of snow and ice because a brand new piece of equipment could not stay operational. It's been extremely frustrating, and so we had to make an emergency purchase. Again, wasn't planned for. And again, to John's point, all of these things are things that we're absorbing in our current budget with the additional revenues that we're seeing. But something that maybe just some background again that keeps me up at night is the fact that 81% of our revenues at the airport are directly tied to airline operations. And so that's parking, that's passenger fees, that's anything that fuel sales. And so you think about it, if you have an Allegiant who all of a sudden decides to drop a market or a route, that's a pretty significant blow to our revenue. And so, as John mentioned, we made significant progress. I think we've been reactionary to a large extent of trying to keep up with things. And I think with John's help, we're trying to now take a breath and really plan for what's ahead of us, get our fund balance where it should be at the airport, which I don't know if we've ever had a fund balance at the airport. Other things that affect the general fund is the vehicle fund. Historically, the airport's been part of that general fund vehicle bank. We're trying to get ourselves off of that to where the general fund's not picking up our vehicle expenses and those sorts of things. So just a little bit of background on what's going on at the airport. We're doing really well. Things, for all intents and purposes, look very positive, but it's just some of that reality of where we've been. We have a brand new facility that we need to start running away for maintenance. Those are things that we're working with the facility to get the right budget amount to stow away every year. It's just things that, like John mentioned, we've only been operating this building and this facility for a little over 18 months, and learning more and more about what it costs to operate the airport in this current configuration. And so you're likely to see a few adjustments to our FY25 budget as we come, just so that we're accounting for all of these things that we didn't account for in the last couple of years. So with that, any questions related to the airport? Yeah.
Thank you so much, Brian. Becky Bogdan.
So Brian, what do you anticipate doing in the next fiscal year so that you guys can be self-sufficient instead of dipping into the general fund?
So I guess operationally, that's good, Councilor Bogdan, that's a good question, I guess. But for this loan, right, I would say we are self-sufficient. That is our mandate from the FAA, that as a public, as a federally obligated airport, our mandate is that we be self-sufficient. So we've added a landing fee for general aviation, which we've never done. I think with our budget, you'll see additional adjustments to our ground leases.
Adjustments up.
They're extremely low right now. And that's just periodic adjustments. Certainly, we're doing everything we can to attract other airlines, which helps the revenue. And that's our focus at this point, is providing additional service. And all indications are that we're on the right track there. Yeah. So, does that answer your question?
Councilor Christensen.
Anytime you start a new operation, so many things you don't know. So that makes total sense to me. And as you think about your learning curve, what should we expect, especially as we talk to our constituents who are saying the airport's killing it, which you guys are. But what should we expect in terms of how that learning curve kind of smooths out the very expenses we're talking about? I know you can't know the future, but just given your experience so far, I mean, do we see it continue to go down to nothing, or will, like, bringing another airline, does that increase costs that you hadn't anticipated?
So as far as operation of the building, some of these learning curves with certification of employees, I see that we have a pretty good handle on that at this point. Maintenance of the building, our utility bills, those sorts of things where we don't have any history, right? Yeah. And Jimmy did a bang up job 2 years ago of trying to figure out what is this going to be for the first year of operation. So so those sorts of things we're getting a handle on. There, as far as personnel, we're getting close. We still have some needs, but that's part of us being cautious and not growing too quickly. Is I think this year in budget you might see one request for additional personnel for one individual, one position, and not. We certainly could use 3 or 4, but I think we're in a pretty good spot where we can make do. And so I think we're getting close to where that learning curve is a lot more predictable. And a lot of that just comes from a history, right? Yeah. If you know anything about our budgeting process every year, it's essentially looking at the last 3 or 4 years and what's been the trend. And we just haven't had a trend at the airport on this scale, at least, to be able to base anything off of.
So does bringing a new airline in increase costs or reduce costs, amortize the ones you have?
So the only way it really increases cost is operationally. more frequency requires that we're there more often. However, right now, we're pretty much there 24/7 with public safety, so that's not likely to impact anything. Our operations, as we get busier and busier, there's a lot more eyes and requirements on us from the FAA as far as snow removal and those sort of things. So it's really, the busier we get, the more we have to look like and feel like a real airport, right? Especially as you get some of these network carriers that aren't okay with a 2-hour delay, right? Some of our carriers, that's no big deal to them, right? But some of these network carriers that we're trying to attract. So operationally, there's a little bit of just upping our game on all levels as far as that goes. And then just the facilities to house the airlines, which we're again going down a road of no taxpayer money and expansion of the terminal and those sorts of things. So.
But I think but the revenue will still be more than the expenses if we add.
Absolutely. So right now, our revenue per passenger is a lot more than our cost per passenger, and so that will continue. So.
All right, Councilor Handley.
I'm just wondering though if this gives us reason to be more cautious about future expansion and slow this down. I'm a little nervous about the unanticipated nature of this seems to me to call for caution rather than aggression. And I'm just wondering if we're learning from this enough to say, okay, we see future expansion of the airport is desirable, but we don't want to do that too fast.
Yeah.
Is that giving you some pause on that?
So fortunately, we're not anywhere ready to start building. Right, we're in a frenzy to try and get the money. Mayor Cafusi's doing all she can. We're in a good spot there, but we're only about halfway, and so we're not expanding tomorrow. And so it gives us some time, I think, to evaluate. And right now, like I say, I'm nervous just because at the end of the day, you all look at me when things aren't going well at the airport. And so that's why I don't sleep at night. There's no indication market-wide that things are slowing down. You look at Salt Lake International, record number of passengers as well. Last year, 26 million passengers through their facility. So the industry as a whole is growing significantly. So I don't think we're in danger of growing. It's just like I say, we've been reacting to a huge tidal wave, and now we're stepping back just a little bit. Maybe not as anxious to add employees when we think we need them and those sorts of things. We do need them, but we're in a position now where the FAA feels a little bit better than they did 3 years ago, right, Mayor? So does that answer your question, George? Just again, there's no indication that things are slowing down. The economics of the expansion.
No, I mean that's actually what worries me is that things are not slowing down, right? The economy and the business of the airport transportation is looking good, and we want to be a part of that. We want to catch that wave, but if we're catching a wave faster than we can make adaptations in a cost-effective way as a city, then we're potentially putting ourselves at risk. Even if we can say that money isn't taxpayer funded to do the expansion, it does cost the taxpayers money when we have to provide for the infrastructure and maintenance and the services. And if the learning curve keeps being steep because we're moving so fast, then I think we're running some risks there that make me uncomfortable.
And I could see that. So the learning curve for me is we've never had 2 airlines. We've never had a terminal that was ours. We operated out of a building that wasn't ours, right? And so when I say the learning curve is steep, I don't see it being as steep to simply add another airline, right? We've got the operation down, we've got the personnel in place. So any of that kind of stuff, I think we've got a handle on for sure. I don't see any huge surprises by growing. Again, we're adding 3 gates, so it's not like we're, I think it's wise to do what we're doing is expanding slowly and slowly, adding 3 gates to allow for for really expansion of new airline services that we can't accommodate right now, even if we wanted to. We just don't have the room for it. So hopefully that speaks peace to your mind.
A little bit.
Gary Garrett.
With this, John, with this helpful background from Brian, could you just review then? So this is the fourth payment to the energy fund, $665. Is this the first time that we've used the general fund to make a payment, a reimbursement to the loan? Or
No,
did you say it's a diminishing amount?
The numbers I was referring to before were just the overall revenues minus expenses.
Okay.
And the transfer from the general fund was just to cover anticipating what the budget was. So the budget we planned right from the beginning that it would cost us more to run the airport than the revenue we were receiving. So the general fund did transfer. As far as the history on this loan, that's completely separate from that. And since the loan was established in 2020, we have done a transfer from the general fund each year. So this is approved. This will be the fourth year that we've done that. But what we did agree to initially, and we did look at it very in depth each year, is to make sure that when the airport does have the capacity, the ability to cover all or portion of the loan, it will do so. That answer your question?
Yes.
Yeah. But the numbers that I read, the 894, that was one of the reasons that were quite high in 23 is we were getting ready for the expansion and whatnot. We weren't reaching the revenues. That's one of the reasons why 23 had a larger deficit. And then 22, before we were into the expansion, we were at 225 as deficit, and then in 21 we're 141. But the good news is in 24, we did, excluding this loan, we had a balanced budget for the airport. And then even with additional revenues, we need to still balance other than this one portion that we're coming back to the council.
So I guess my question then, John, would be more general in nature, and you have a good view of the budget process citywide. Why wouldn't this loan be made from airport revenue annually, and then the needs that they have come to the city as part of the budget process? New security office or other needs that they have. Why isn't it reversed?
I think that's a good question, and the way we looked at it was let's set our goal first to see if we can make the airport self-sufficient, excluding this loan, and then we'll try to bring it in. But the other way would be, like you mentioned, to include it in the budget from the get-go, and then see what we can do to cover that difference. That's just kind of an approach that we took.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Helpful, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions?
All right, doesn't look like it. Thank you, John and Brian.
Thanks for the good work out there.
All right, now we have a discussion regarding an ordinance amending Provo City Code 614 and 15 to make various technical updates and corrections. This is presented by Aaron Ardmore, our Development Services Planning Supervisor.
So this is on your agenda for tonight, so I've prepared slides and everything for tonight. Just a background on this, the study is this is an annual event for our department. We try to keep track of errors and unclear code throughout each calendar year, and we bring it to the Planning Commission in December or January of each year. We've been doing that for a few years now, and this is our list for this year. But if you had any questions on your packet that I can try to address now or later tonight, that'd be great.
All right, any questions for Aaron? Rachel.
All right, so the state gutted our ability to regulate where food trucks can be?
It did.
All right, tell us about that.
Before we had a boundary around our historic downtown where they could park, we also had rules about how long they could park outside of that on private property. The state legislature last year removed those, the ability for municipalities to regulate those tenants. So good example is kitty corner from us. There's a couple food trucks on the Fresh Market parking lot. You may have noticed that they haven't moved for weeks, and they can do that now as long as they have the private property owner's permission. So we had to get rid of that map and send some of those rules in the code.
Any other questions for Aaron?
Does that mean more tacos for more people, or?
Hopefully.
All right, well, thanks, Aaron.
Thanks.
All right, a discussion regarding an ordinance amending the zone map classification of approximately 1.04 acres of property generally located at 4981 North Edgewood Drive from the village at Riverwoods from the SDP1 zone to the SC3 zone. And this was presented by Aaron Ardmore too.
Okay, thank you. I'll go a little bit more into this one. So this proposal, some of the advances. Okay.
On the side, there's just
Okay, thank you. All right, so in this picture, we have the AMC movie theater. Initially, the project was to be south of the movie theater, but through some disagreements with AMC, they had to move it to the north, which before it was administrative approval and everything was pretty close to being done, but now it incorporates a rezone because the north half of that parcel, the north 1 acre, is part of that specific development plan zone that put in the townhomes and the mixed use commercial along the north side of the river was there. So what's coming to you is just a request to rezone that one parcel. So there's 2 parcels there. If you can see that blue line in the middle. 4981 just needs to be rezoned to the SC3 to match the parcel on the south. So this mixed use office building can be built there. For all other intents and purposes, it meets the zoning code. Staff's recommending approval on it. There's plenty of adjacent parking, and we think it'd be a pretty vast improvement to what's a popular mixed-use center for the city.
Craig Christensen.
So looking at a couple of things that the neighborhood issues brought up, one was around the adequate parking. And it sounds like you're saying you're convinced that there is adequate parking.
Yeah, so a couple of these arrows show that the Riverwoods has a lot of surface parking.
Yeah.
They're providing 87 on their specific site for the office building, which leaves by our code requirements based on square footage of the building, leaves them about 55 short. There's more than 55 regularly vacant surface stalls in the area.
Okay.
And the nice thing about this is all the property is owned and managed by one person, one entity.
Yeah.
So management of that, parking and access agreements between the properties is an easy thing to figure out and manage.
Okay. The second issue was around just the current river amenity.
Yes.
In terms of how this would actually, I couldn't tell from the slides you had, how this would impact the trail and just the riverfront.
Sure. So you can see that kind of gray path there. That's the existing trail. So that won't be modified or removed or anything. What they're going to do is try to enhance the connection to that with this building, with some nice plaza area just adjacent to the building, some park space, really making that an amenity for the people that work there and the business. So I think that was initially a concern of staff too, but once we saw the plans, we were pretty comfortable and happy that they're treating the river as an amenity for the building rather than putting it back towards it.
And Aaron, will there be a development agreement that it has to look like this?
There could be.
Okay.
Hasn't been brought up.
Okay. When will that, this is our chance for that, right?
Yeah, today, tonight would be your chance to see if the developer can commit to this specific layout.
Okay, Councilor Hanley.
Yeah, I think that's my only major concern is, I mean, because I don't see the point of status quo being very helpful, but I would love to make sure that the river front is really well used,
Yeah.
not only for the occupants of the building, but obviously for the public, right? I mean, there's that area is really stunning, actually. I've taken photographs in that area just to sort of surprise people that this is actually in an urban area near a shopping mall, that it's hard to believe because it's so beautiful. So I would really want to make sure that we have a clear idea of exactly what the riverfront's going to look like and what the access would be for the public, how it would enhance and beautify that area and preserve what's already there rather than compromise that in any way.
Yeah.
So it's hard to just give it a stamp of approval without some guarantee there.
Yeah, totally valid.
And these drawings are gorgeous, like,
Yeah,
if we can,
if they stay
if
that
we
way.
can make sure we get that guaranteed, then it's a no-brainer. Becky Bogdan.
So my question is the building gonna be on where that current parking lot is? Is that
Yes.
how this is gonna lay out? And then the rest of the parking that's around it is still additional pieces of that existing parking lot?
So this probably is the best picture for that. So it takes up a good chunk of that surface parking for the building, leaving some of the surface parking for on-site parking, and then the remainder of the required parking would be through the parking lots to the east.
Right, but this is what I'm saying, that parking lot is to the north, right there by the river.
Yes.
This is gonna be on top of that, right? And
Yeah.
If we look at what's existing now and what's proposed here, this is on
Right.
top of that parking lot.
Yep, they'll demo part of the parking lot to some of the.
So they'll demo part of it and the other part will be on where they have.
The other part's park.
Yeah, so
The
some of the
green
surface will
stuff.
stay. I'm not sure rip all the asphalt. I suppose it could. So that's just kind of a construction management question, but yeah. So the building will go where those parking lots.
Well, I'm just trying to envision this on what's existing, right? And so I just wanna know if this building's gonna take up that entire parking lot, or if we're looking at, it's gonna move to that green space that's right.
No,
to
it
the
won't take
left.
up the entire parking lot. So if you have a good before and after. So there you can see, and here it's overlaid. You can see the building goes a little bit west into the greenway there, the landscaping against the river. But the majority of the building is where there's currently some parking stalls.
And how far is it from the building to those units, those residential units? 'Cause it looks like it's blurring over the top of those.
Yeah, there's about 80 to 100 feet between the north edge of the building and the south edge of the first unit.
So what's a normal buffer between residential and?
Normally, it's a 20-foot requirement for transitional design standards. It can increase depending on the height of the building, but they've more than given the required buffer between residential and commercial. So.
They have, even though there's.
Yeah, it was 100, you only have to do 20.
Thank you.
Is there, but as a mixed use area, isn't there some difference in those standards?
There is, but the transitional development standards still apply because it's a residential use against adjacent to non-residential use. But like I said, between their buffer landscaping and the parking lot, they've satisfied that.
But other than the letter that we saw in the packet, has there been any other negative feedback from?
No, that's the only response that we've had. Just what's noted in the staff report and then the email that came right before the commission.
My other question would be, are those residential units, are they legal Airbnb units?
No, those are townhomes.
Well,
And
I
it's a
ran into
residential
it,
zone, so they wouldn't be allowed to do short-term rentals.
because I did run into a guy that had wanted that as an Airbnb when I went to go look at it. So I was just curious if that was in the okay zone or.
It's not. They
And it's an HOA. I have one of my sons lives over there.
One good thing about that neighborhood is that there's no parking lot on the streets already, so that neighborhood will not be inundated with parking, which is a nice thing.
Yeah, pretty narrow streets, can pretty common.
Councillor Whipple.
So right now, it's just 2 empty parking lots.
Right.
Why were those parking lots there? Did we anticipate that we needed that much parking at some point in the past? Was that required parking? Or is it just a placeholder until we could put something better there now?
I don't think that's ever been required parking. It's been surplus parking for the theater. I know people that go to the theater and park to the north side of it, because sometimes it's closer to the door.
Yeah.
Depending on the night. But yeah, it's very rarely parked.
So it was just kind of placeholder use
Placeholder,
of the
it's
land
just-
until this came.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
All right, anything else for Aaron? All right, thanks, Aaron.
Thank you.
We will now take a break till 3 o'clock.
Wow. So. I mean, is it well, that big side, none of the other ones are actually. Yeah, Catrice loves my reeds are too fat, my fingers are too fat for. Yours is just fine. I have no need to check it out. Okay, it doesn't. See, I have a diamond one that's thicker. It's so funny. Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah. like,
Gary,
I just
did
love
we
that.
get you at the Parks and Recreation Board?
I've been getting emails, yeah.
Okay, good. All right.
And I worked out there this morning, so I'm really feeling.
All right, you're getting closer to the boardroom.
Recording stopped.
Waiting for
Well,
boarding.
we should make sure, I guess let's wait till boarding comes.
Oh.
But-
Okay.
Did you hand me that jar?
They're having the same.
One allows you to do the other.
Yeah, I mean, but why not, do you not drink sugar sodas? Because they're like syrup, right?
Right, I'd rather.
But then
eat
you'd
my allergy.
rather eat your candy.
I'd rather eat my
I actually think the sugar is better for you than the chemicals.
Agreed.
It's not what they
It's
say.
better than Ogden.
That is
Sugar
totally
is-
what they say.
No, it's not.
The sugar is really bad for you.
All that is
water.
Yeah, no, the sugar's very bad.
I think we pick what articles that we believe in.
How much?
5 years, 3 months and 2 weeks.
Wow, that's like AA
You're
level.
like, I know, it must have been really
I
bad.
used to drink 2 doses a day. Full strength.
Oh, I don't need that.
And finally went into get by soon.
Now we're done.
It's a miracle. All right, are we ready?
Recording in progress.
All right. Number 7, we're gonna have a discussion regarding a resolution approving an interlocal agreement regarding funding for trail and bridge improvements along the Provo River Trail from Columbia Lane to the University Parkway. This will be presented by Gordon Haight, our Engineering Division Director.
All right, thank you. So a couple years ago, the city received a grant of about $4.5 million to improve the trail along Columbia Road and State Street. I had a chance to go walk under those bridges. The first time I went through there, they had under the State Street there was a doll taped up there, and I stare at it, and the spider webs, it's dark, it's narrow, very scary. So we're very excited about this thing.
Very descriptive.
It would be dangerous to ride your bike through there. You should get off and walk it. It's just a bad situation. Anyway, the Parks Department has a 90% design done of this project. So what they'd like to do is get an interlocal agreement with Salt Lake County so that they can start spending funds now. The money becomes available on January 1st, 2025. This allows the Parks Department to do work, get the design, and possibly go out to bid for construction in 2024, and then in 2025 get fully reimbursed. So the county has approved this resolution, and so this board meeting is to talk about this, and then we come back next city council for the city council.
I was just curious, Gordon, why is this Salt Lake County?
Oh, you meant Utah Lake?
Yes, you mean Utah County, right?
It's Utah.
Sorry.
Okay, that's what I
have
thought.
spent my whole career in Salt Lake.
Okay, no problem. I was like, Salt Lake County's giving us money?
Yeah.
Give us. All right, that makes sense. Thank you.
Just cause they felt like.
All right, anyone else have a question
We have
for
a
Gordon?
very aggressive parks department, so the other counties can get their parks, so
Becky Bogdan.
Are you gonna hang the creepy doll back up?
it's not coming back.
That may cause me to vote no then.
No, and what they have, it's a really great, it's a big, wide, and it just makes it such safer, such more inviting,
Lighting, we'll have lighting.
lighting, everything about this. There's landscape involved, there's good access, it's really needed, because the rest of the trail looks really nice. If you go through the trail, it's great, and you hit this, it's not as great.
All right, any other questions?
Let's take care of flooding underneath so that the trail won't have to close.
So that's another thing, they're gonna be putting it in such a way that even when you have high water, right now, when there's high water, there's water on the bridge and have to close it from time to time. So there is a lot of engineering, safety, just aspects to it. It just, we go on and on why this is a great place.
There's a couple of examples of its style and look that's already been done on the Provo River Trail.
That's what
near
I was
the
thinking.
Railroad tracks and also near the motion picture studio. You know, so that's a great example of improved widening and also making it for year-round use. So we've got a good model that we continue.
Great. All right, well, I think that's it, Gordon. I think you're still here, though.
Yeah, I'm gonna just.
Next, a discussion regarding a proposal to annex approximately 68 acres in West Provo along Lakeview Parkway. And this is again Gordon Haight.
So there's some property, let's bring up a map, show you this. This is the Lakeview Parkway. And this piece of property is in the county, it's not inside the city limits. This is Provo High School, and you kind of familiarize, this is the federal government where they have the estuary. This is the harbor. So this kind of is a zoom in of this. You can see a portion of Provo High is still in the county. This is property owned by the city. Then we have private property owners over. The city actually ends up owning this property as well. So let's kind of go through this a little bit. So I wanted to talk about oriented as well. So this is property that the city owns, and what's sponsoring this is the city's interested in doing some affordable housing as well as some market housing on that property. In order to service it, the city wants to annex that property in the city. It makes sense. Now, this property owner, Skipper Bay, owns this property through here. They have signed the annexation petition and want to come into the city as well. I have met with Spain and Brad. Dale Spain does not want to come to the city. Very adamant. Does not want to come in. What his intent is to get a conservation easement over his property, and he'd like to keep it in the county. The state law sort of says you're not supposed to have islands when you do these annexations. There are some exceptions that you can work if the county is agreeable to allow you to create an island, but it may not be possible. I told him we're going forward with the annexation, and there'd be an opportunity for public comment and discussion. Brad is a little more amenable for coming in. He wants to develop some of this property. However, it is impacted by wetlands. In fact, both properties are.
Impacted by what?
Wetlands.
Oh.
That make development very, very difficult. So the purpose of today is just to talk to you, make sure the council understands what we're doing, and then in the next city council meeting, we'll start bringing you a resolution to annex this property The resolution will include this. We can start the process with this. You can shrink the area, the city council can, but you can't expand it once we start the process, or otherwise we can start over. So we're going to bring you this full amount, knowing that there's 2 property owners that are in question. However, we have enough signatures to bring them in against the road.
So what's the challenge if Despain wants to put a conservation easement? What's the difference between whether it's county land or city land? Is there implications there? Because it seems like there wouldn't be. There
could be. In my mind, I've sat down and talked to him. I don't know that there's anything specific in his mind other than he feels that if it's open space, it's more attributable to a county issue than if you're in a city, you're sort of an urban, you know everything around it like it's.
Maybe this is a related question, but is there, there was mention of the Provo City Housing Authority having interest in this for a housing project. So clearly he would not be interested in that. And I don't know what there wasn't much more said in the packet about what that housing project might be. And I'm a little nervous about, as I understand it, we can vote on the annexation without any commitment to what actually is going to happen with those properties. But I'm a little nervous about signaling a readiness to, sign the dotted line on a housing project without knowing anything about it. And I need to go out and look at those properties, but we're talking about the new Delta area. And it's just making me a little nervous. As much as I support what the Provo City Housing Authority does, I just don't have a sense of, is that an appropriate place for a housing project, especially something that might be higher density that's so far away from everything. It may not be the right project in the right place. So that's kind of floating around in my mind as a background nervousness about it. But I'm assuming that's what's incentivizing the annexation, or
I think that initially started this annexation. If you look back at this, no, I didn't put the actual annexation, but the actual annexation plat was drawn up several years ago. So this has always been contemplated. As you can see, Lakeview Parkway.
Is north?
Yes.
You just
tell us. Sorry, I changed it on you.
Okay.
Those 2 slides. Anyway, this is in the county, it's public right away, so technically this is a county road. For us to maintain it, we need to get permits from the county. We should be working with the county. They should snowplow this road. It doesn't make sense that this is in the county. When you annex this in, the city council is going to annex these in a zone, and you get to pick what zone you're going to bring these in. So you can bring it into a holding ag zone and upzone it to a residential zone. You have that. That's one of the things that's going to be in your document. So I think
aren't we supposed to bring it in as Osprey as the default, or it's not our policy?
So yes, first they come to us Osprey, we have to come back as a second cut to change the zone. And it's at that point that we will show you a plan, we'll set it how we want, but it's that point that we would bring the plans in.
Yeah.
So again, this property owner is interested in doing this development. They want to come to the city. The city's property is here. So the intent would to bring it back and maybe answering your questions that are associated.
Councilor Bogdan.
Okay, so this might be more for Bill. So that OSPR, wasn't the intent, tell me if I'm wrong, was the intent of that if the city ever sold that we'd have to purchase that same amount of property someplace else to preserve the open space?
No, it was simply that the OSPR would be kind of a holding zone until a development plan and a rezone application came in. The idea several years ago was that we wouldn't rezone property and annex at the same time. We would bring it as an OSPR zone.
It was sort of intended to discourage developers from assuming that they could take advantage of an adjacent property and say, we want to move for the annexation with the express purpose of developing it. To sort of send a signal that wasn't what we wanted as a default.
So this being city property, this having the intent of developing it, it's not going to hurt the city in any way.
No.
Or we just have to change it down the road if we develop it?
In terms of the city property, the housing development I've been working with the housing authority on clusters the housing to the north end, because on the south end of the city property, there's wetlands, and that wetlands leads over to the other properties to the south. Across the street from this housing is the high school parking lot. Okay. So I mean, this is the most developable area of all of that annexation.
It's that left corner up there.
Yes.
So is the Despain property right next to that?
Yeah.
There's the B and B one and then the.
Right, there's a drywall company south of the city property, and there's the Spain property south of that.
So would in your mind, or at least in your conversation so far, it doesn't sound like the Despain property is even being contemplated for any development. And is he aware of that? Is he?
Mr. Despain,
Yeah.
he has come into the county and talked, but that was all before there was any idea to develop the city property.
So I spoke to him yesterday. He is working with the Utah Conservation to put an easement over his property so it can't be developed. Okay. So that's his current plan.
So yeah, hopefully if he does that, he understands, and this goes to Craig's question, there shouldn't be any worry at all about being annexed. In fact, you know, when we went through this with the Smith properties, they're going to have better jurisdiction in terms of police and fire if they're within the city. So it's actually probably an advantage to them to consider that if they know that they're going to be able to definitively protect it with a conservation easement. There's no downside to being annexed.
I didn't fully understand this reasoning. I just wanted to convey this going very forcefully to get out on the annex.
Yeah.
Which is appreciated.
Any other questions for Gordon?
Yes.
Okay, for Councilor Whipple.
So the area that we're working with the housing authority would just be that Provo City Corporation parcel at the north end?
Yes.
Yeah.
So there's approximately 1960, but I think that's two sides.
Yeah, that's both of them.
Our parcel that's contemplated for development is approximately 12 acres. Right. Again, we're only on the north part of that.
So this is also, so the full 19 includes this property, which we're not. Yes.
Yeah. And so our development would have that nice mix of high density housing, and it would have open space to account for the wetlands.
No,
On part of it.
Part of it would be high density housing. It's
Well, not higher, but just, is it like
for
basically an R16?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so not huge lots, just normal size lots.
6,000 square feet. Probably, perhaps not even lots other than the footprint of your home. Again, we're trying to keep the cost of the house down. So by just selling the footprint, it helps us do that.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds good. I just wanted to be clear that this annexation is not a plan to develop this entire strip with all of these properties owned by different property owners. Okay.
That's reassuring.
This property owner will likely come into the city to ask for a rezone after annexation. So this Skipper Bay property isn't getting any promises, or I haven't seen anything that they've signed the annexation petition.
Skipper Bay's been talking to us for years about trying to do something with their property.
Well, I, for one, am thrilled about the developing the development for workforce housing with the land trust. All right, any more questions for Gordon?
This is just the annexation process.
That was quite the flow.
Yeah, that was, I was like,
I
sheesh.
didn't want to go through it.
No,
Don't even have to go
we didn't
through
even
it.
go to no, we already went through it.
For the city attorney, oh, here we go. This is from their office, so he would answer every question associated with this.
Well, if we could have Gary speak then, like, why not?
Statutes are even worse than the closure.
All right, thanks, Gordon.
Thank you, Gordon.
All right, next we have a discussion regarding a draft interlocal agreement with Orem City for utilities on 2000 North. And this will be presented by Danielle Nixon. I don't think we've heard from Danielle before.
She's amazing. You're in
Hello,
good
Danielle.
shape.
That's my first time here, so.
Welcome.
So yes, I'm here to present a draft interlocal agreement between Orem and Provo for utilities being placed in 2000 North. When 2000 North border was created, there was an agreement that was created with Orem, which, you know, said that we would work together on getting any utilities that we needed placed in 2000 North, work together on getting everything that was needed. So I started and completed a design of 2000 North, but just so everyone knows which part of 2000 North I'm talking about, it's the one that connects between Lakeview Parkway and Geneva Road. So we're doing that part because also Orem City is going to be bringing their Lakeview Parkway connection, and we'll need certain utilities connected in from 2000 North. So the utilities that we're going to be working with Orem on is a water line and a storm drain line, and then also some power, putting in some lighting. So Orem's water line will be on the north side, along with the storm drain, which is a 48-inch storm drain line. And then Provo City will have a 12-inch water line on the south side of that road as well. And this is Lakeview Parkway on this side. And again, just showing the outline of where the utilities will be going. So again, this is just a draft interlocal agreement that I'll bring you back next session, the actual agreement for you to review and approve. But just wanted to give you a heads up.
Okay, I was actually confused about this. I was thinking this was that street that we were giving them ownership of. Anyway, so the point is that is the road owned by half of us then? Like, does it break in the middle?
So Provo City owns to the back of curb on the
Which
north
is why
side.
they need the interlocal to work on there.
Yeah, so
Okay.
Provo City owns the entire road curb to curb. And so any additional work that's been done into this road has to be done through us. And so since we're gonna be doing the road work here this year, they asked if we could work with them on getting utilities that they need in the future in place.
So they'll be doing the utilities before the road is finished. They're not gonna be digging up our nice new road.
Right, so kind of what we worked out is that because we're gonna have a contractor on site doing all of this road work already, we'll just have that contractor do that work, and Orem will pay us that cost that the contractor charged us to do the work.
Okay. Councilor Christensen.
So are there any budget implications as a result of this?
No, so any costs that are associated with these
They're
utilities will be them that will be paying.
Councilor Bogdan.
So let me just clarify that too. So what will happen is we will have to show money coming into the city for this project. So we'll go out to bid, we'll get bid numbers for their part of the project. And once we have that, this interlocal will be signed by Orem, and they'll give us money, we'll receive those funds, and then we'll expend them. So it's budget, but it's not going to affect anything that you're doing now or just in a minute.
Thank you. That's helpful.
Councilor Bogdan.
So we're gonna start doing the road in 2024, is that what you said?
Yeah, this year. Yep.
And it'll be finished by
the fall of this year.
Oh, wow. So 20th North, right there where the light is at Geneva Road, is gonna go all the way to the Lakeview Parkway.
Yes.
The Lakeview Parkway doesn't go all the way up there yet.
That's another project that is connecting in with this. So we will be doing a 2-lane section on Lakeview Parkway that will connect all the way down to where it ends right by the high school. So there will be a full connection all the way up to Geneva from the high school.
And when does that start?
That will be the same year. This is all gonna be in the same project. So it's gonna be one big project for whoever comes through. They'll be just separated into different schedules based on the location and utilities that are gonna be needed.
So will the whole thing be done by fall?
That's the plan, yes.
And are we even doing the pathway to?
We are doing the trail, yes. We're gonna finish the trail all the way to the Orem border from where it ends at 620 North.
And that should all be completed by fall 2024?
That's the plan, yes.
She's gonna hold you to that.
I will, because I'm gonna tell them that it's in a public meeting, so now it can
She
be
said
released
that's
to the
the
neighborhood. Thank you.
All right, any other questions for Danielle?
Other than that, it'll be amazing.
That's a huge day.
honestly, yeah.
Okay,
And
well,
we just
thank
need Orem to start on their side.
But they won't start until at least 2025, so.
Are they doing the trail? Are they do they have a trail that meets with?
Yes.
Okay.
And so then it'll continue north to where?
I'm not quite sure exactly, but they connect into Geneva Road at some point. So their section is like a mile and a half long. It's not a very long section compared to.
So it connects
Swing
maybe at
out
the
that like
Parkway?
a bell rope.
Is that where it connects? Is it the Parkway?
All right, thank you so much. All right, next a discussion regarding an application to vacate Temple Hill Drive and surplus the city's portion of the street. This is presented by Gary Millward. You could just stay right there,
Thank you,
Gary.
Chair. I intend to get up. I just want to bring your attention. We're expecting some attorneys from Curtin McConkey. I don't see them. Are they out there?
Oh.
Great. Not want to start before we.
Get everybody.
It's a street vacation, like a street party.
Doesn't it sound like fun?
Let's
Yeah,
have a street
I'm always
vacation.
disappointed. Every time.
I think you're looking at the wrong vacation.
I think so.
Although what does a street vacation look like? Is that like barbecuing out in the street?
Block
Is that like
party.
a parade kind of a thing?
Block party.
Block party?
That's what I would say.
Rachel,
Well,
you're
that's
hosting?
what I'm actually going to talk about, I suspect. Thank you. Appreciate that, Gary. Super Bowl week. Oh, 1 second. Go ahead.
They're expecting one more person.
Want to start?
You want to start? Yeah. You're gonna ask me most of the questions then.
I was gonna say, yeah, well, so I was gonna say, it'd be Super Bowl week, you may get used to Joe Montana or Steve Young, and sometimes you get Nick Mullins or Jimmy Garoppolo. So, I actually know nothing about this. Brian asked me to cover it for me, he did the entire negotiation. So, in the event that you have questions, and please don't hesitate to ask questions, but just as a heads up before we launch in, I will almost certainly be deferring those questions either to the attorneys from Curtin McConkey or to Public Works or both, because I know very little about the particulars. So this has to do with an application, it's part of the planned remodel for the Provo Temple. This is the one on the hill, not the city center temple. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints has filed an application. Slide, there you go. In order to vacate Temple Hill Drive. So those of you familiar with it, correct me if I get any of this wrong, but my understanding is that is the roadway that runs, I guess it would be west of the temple, a little bit downhill. That street connects Temple Drive and Temple View Drive, passes between the MTC playing fields. Some of you are familiar with that as well. I had some fun games there some 25 years ago myself. And the current Provo Temple. So that street has no access for any other home or business other than the temple and its parking areas. By law, when property underlying a vacated street, when the vacation occurs, it's split between adjoining owners. And for the majority of this property, that is the church. So they would get both lots up to the middle, except for a corner on the south side where we have some property with some city facilities. So that area would normally go to the city. So the church wants to incorporate all of that into the new temple design, and so they are asking that the city surplus that portion and sell it to the church. And so that has been the basis of discussion that we've talked about. And again, I may rely heavily on Gary for this. Me and Brian walked through it, and it was intricate enough that it might be helpful to have him have more specificity. This is what we've got underlying or near the area that is proposed to be vacated. There's a 48-inch non-reinforced concrete water supply lines, 80 years old. 27-inch, we call this, in all the documents, it's called 27 by 30, and I understand this because it's not a uniform size, it's a V-shape, something a little bit unusual. In any event, that facility is over 100 years old and has an aqueduct feature to it. There's an 8-inch pressurized water line that provides water to the intermediate pressure zone and 2 water storage tanks that's over 50 years old. And I understand that is not in the main road. It's a little bit more to the west and south. Is that right? So it kind of goes over the corner that we're proposing to surplus and sell. There's also an 8-inch pressurized water line that supplies the Rock Canyon pressure zone and 1 water storage tank, also 50 years old, and 1 8-inch sewer line. So additionally, the temple remodel project requires a new storm drain line that doesn't currently exist. So here is our map. Does this have a
I'll just slide back by this infrastructure.
So, sorry. Oh, no. I'm not sure why I discovered that. In the screen is what I was talking about. So, I'll just move here. Let's make it clearly okay. The majority of these run roughly in this area. The one to the water tank I referenced is only about 8 inches. This one right here. And there will need to be that new sewer line that we're going across. Questions about that before we move from the map? Maybe it's not too important to know precisely where they are. In short, they run in this vicinity between those 2 properties. This is the Provo City property. So this is approximately the area that surplus and sold, right? Okay. So the church has established a timeline for completing this project, and Brian has been working closely with them to try to accommodate that desire. So issues at stake here. We know that obviously you heard from the age of some of these structures. They're going to need to be changed in the near future anyway. Nothing in the ground will last forever. I understand that there's been a fair amount of patchwork that has occurred. So the new storm drain line and sewer line realignment are necessary for the church's project to service the new temple construction. These lines have to be designed in relation to the location of the city's water lines, so everything will fit together, of course. There are a number of complications and problems for both parties with replacing the city lines in the future after the temple is complete. Obviously, we don't want to go through this large project to build the temple and then tear up a road that's just been constructed. That would make very little sense. So staff working on the temple project and city staff are exploring the possibility of mitigating these problems and doing the necessary work simultaneously, which is essentially the proposal that we're bringing here. So the infrastructure improvements that are contemplated would be that all 4 water lines would be replaced while they're doing the remodel project. The city would provide the plans and specifications for those lines. The church, though, would install the lines, pay for all the costs of installation, except for tie-in work that would be necessary to connect them to the city main trunks after they're completed. The city would have inspection rights and final approval of the installation. And once the work is accepted, ownership of the infrastructure would be conveyed to the city. And I suppose, I don't know if we have it in here maybe later, but in some of the documents I looked at, we're also contemplating 55-foot easement. Yes, 55-foot easement for access to those completed structures so that if there is a future need to access them, the city can do that. The church would install the new sewer line from the temple building to the intersection of Temple View Drive and 900 East. And from the temple building to Temple View Drive would be a private line, essentially a lateral, if you're familiar with that phrase, maintained by the church. The line installed in Temple View Drive to the intersection of 900 East will be conveyed to the city like the other infrastructure I just mentioned. And the church would dispose of the existing line. So as part of this proposal, the church would fund the design and installation of the required storm drain line. So moving ahead. visit later on, just so you can see my own slides. So as part of that, we'll have the 55-inch easement for the city to continue to access these facilities, and an easement for the new 8-inch Rock Canyon pressure zone water line, which is in a slightly different place. The city currently has several easements, both prescriptive and otherwise, that we would renounce, so we would get rid of those in exchange for the new 55-foot being contemplated here. And then, as I mentioned at the beginning, after the vacation, we would surplus that corner of property that would normally revert to the city, and then sell that to the church, so that they would have contiguous property across where the street now lies. For sale of that property, the city and the church have each done appraisals, and we agreed the fair market value would be $11 a square foot, sale price of $175,395. So that is an overview. I'd be happy to defer any questions.
I have a question for you, for engineering. What about, we have the water tanks and stuff there. Are we giving them any easements in that area?
We're gonna basically maintain the property that we have around the tanks. The easement up on the road is very bottom, the last bullet point is what we're going to sell to the church,
Okay.
which is basically half the width of the road. We are getting one of our water lines is full, one of the water lines is going through that easement that we're easement on the property going to sell.
Okay.
Other than that, we have the Temple Corporation on this side of us, and we have BYU or the LDS Church on the other side of us. So we're trying to clean this project. We're trying to keep that separate. So we are maintaining the properties that we have.
Gary, could you please talk to the mic for the record?
I'm sorry.
Okay, so we're not losing any of our easements or property rights on where the water tanks are.
I'm sorry, I was a little distracted. We are not losing. I'm trying to.
I think it was on before.
Okay, so did I answer your question?
Yes, thank you. Are there any other questions? Councilor Bogdan.
Okay, so there are volleyball courts on top of some of those tanks, right?
Yes.
Okay.
That's city property. That's part of the maintenance agreement we have with BYU. So it's our property that they maintain.
Okay, so who are they used by? PMGC?
NGC.
So they're not public.
Oh, I heard that question, but that's who uses it, so.
Okay, so then that negates the issue of do we need to provide parking for the volleyball courts themselves?
There is a parking lot there, but I don't know, I'm sure people go there, the general public, but I don't think it's posted or anything like that as far as person.
So it won't be a Parks and Rec problem, is what we're saying.
Yeah, it should not be a problem.
Councilor Christensen.
So I just don't want to guess, just want to be clear. So the fair market value of the street, $11 a square foot, about $175,000. And the church is going to pay an additional $3 million in these services?
They're not gonna pay us any.
No, the value.
That's correct.
But they'll be paying an additional $3 million.
Whatever it costs them to do it, they will cover that expense.
There's only been estimate cost. I don't think we're still working on the plans. So it's just what I would call a shotgun estimate as far as what those costs would be.
In short, the city wouldn't pay for the work constantly, except for the times.
Councilor Hanley.
I'm wondering if we could hear from the representatives for the church a little bit about what the vacation of the streets purpose is, what the plan is for that area. Because I know there were questions about parking and about design and so on. I don't know how much you can share.
I should hear this. So I'm Chris Robbins. I'm the senior project manager for the special projects department. Will be managing this construction project. So as you know,
One of the reasons I just been assigned this early last year, there's been 4 project managers before me, but I will get further than that. As I understand it, in the beginning, back in 23, the vacation was being considered because they would like to move the building down the hill and twist it a little bit, get a center line on the property. And when that happened, it triggered a redevelopment plan. The redevelopment plan adds, the new redevelopment adds for more parking. And by taking this street and vacating it, the legal issues with it, it was given to the city. But that allowed us to then take all that land, that little square off towards the BYU property, and then the rest of it, and put parking around the back side of the temple up in the hillside, so expanding our parking. And so it triggered 2 things: redevelopment, and of course then the vacating of the property, and then of course we rented our wonderful water lines, and hey, what is he doing with these things? I think Jerry like, yeah, what are we gonna do? And you just started working on it. And so we're taking care of that, which then releases the ability to vacate the roadway. There's a piece that's paid for, but that's what's driving it all.
Yeah, I guess thank you. What I recall, there was some worry, it seemed to me, about parking on Temple Drive, the 2, streets, the Temple side of the street, and I was surprised that there was a concern about that. Those are, away from it, they're across the street from any residential uses. It doesn't seem to me that there's any problem at all with patrons using the street parking that's available all around.
Actually, that's not in the subject matter, but let me keep going on. So part of the other things that we're doing is we will be basically going in the right of way and taking out the curb and gutter all the way up North Temple Drive, and then Temple View Drive, Temple Hill Drive, and putting in better sidewalks, and putting angle parking in all the way around, increasing the parking around the property on those sides. Now, I'm told by planning that if you want to go and ask the council or whatever planning department to go ahead and add those to your accounts, you can, but you have to go through process. We said, no, we'll just add what the development agreement requires on the site, and that'll be just extra. It's not counted. So we have met, at least we hope we have. We're supposed to get a report back yesterday for planning on the site design. The parking and improvements around the outside, which include pump outs and greenery and trees and so on and so forth. We get a little more just instead of curb and gutter. And so that's added too.
That's helpful. I guess I was surprised that there was that worry. I mean, I was worried that I guess the goal was to eliminate parking on the streets and expand your parking inside. And it seemed to me that maybe that was asking, or I don't know, it was just sort of creating a big parking lot desert in what is a beautiful property, and I'd love to see lots of greenery.
There's still a lot of greenery, and they're actually getting more and more than even what is here. Because of the more, we always improve it. So there'll be a lot more trees, it's gonna get pretty stark. I'm just want to warn you. It's gonna go gone, but it goes back in. I just finished St. Louis. So there was concern down there about the trees, and so we tripled the trees that we found. And stayed as many of the big ones as we could, obviously, right? We amp up our site. So there's a lot more walking around it, and so on and so forth. We'll get rid of a lot of things because of too much of this.
Why? Okay, Councilor Whipple.
All right, well, while you're up. So this is the first I've heard about putting angled parking on the streets around the temple. Right now, I believe there's a fence around the property, so you have to walk a long way if you park on the street to go and get into the temple.
There's gonna be
Well,
entrance up at the top there.
So there'll be more points
Yes.
of entrance from the street. Okay, that will be helpful.
Yeah.
So how much parking, how much is the parking changing? Like how many stalls do you have inside the property now and the on-street parking? And what will it change to?
Yeah,
Because you said you're adding more.
Well, we had more because of the planning, because of the new redevelopment, that the code changes, right? So it requires, I think we went from like 700 or actually to 1,100. But that's also, they are allowing us to count the parking over the space center. So if you take that away, it's almost like a couple hundred or something. But that's, vacated road helps us get there and reduce open space.
And do you really need that much parking for the facility, or is it just the requirements?
That's what I was gonna be asked. Let's see, well, before I renovated St. George and Jordan River, St. George and Salt Lake City and Provo City were always fighting to who's the busiest. Always busy. And the reason why the reconstruction is how to step into it is that it needs to get bigger and it needs to be more efficient. Right now it's not efficient, besides its other issues. And that's you know, that's what I learned in my renovation district. It's worn out and we need to make it bigger. There's more need to actually get busier with us. There's a lot more because of code requirement, we're adding a lot more bike parking, a lot more walking space and so on and so forth. So it's reading the code now, which is a lot more aggressive than it has been in the past.
Now, last time you met with us, you said you weren't increasing the square footage of the building. You are increasing the square footage?
Well, yes, increase a little bit. Oh, I don't know that. That was before me.
Yeah, but you are increasing the square footage, like how much?
It's about 20,000. Patron spaces and the way of functionality, of course, the way it's tiered as square footage, right? But that allows the efficiency to go up. And so, and of course,
Okay, any more questions? Councilor Whipple has more questions.
Yeah, but not for you necessarily. So thank you. Really, thank you. So I just wanted to get clarification on the surplus property and the money. So the money is just for the surplus property. It's not to pay for the street that's being vacated. That's not being sold.
That is the surplus property.
I thought that is the surplus
Yeah.
property.
So it's money just for, so this area up to this point, since the church owns both sides, with the vacation reverts to them. So it's just this portion adjacent to our property. Right there, that's my understanding, that's right.
Yeah.
So that
It's half of it.
price, just that.
Yeah. So it's just a little bit of property that's being surplus, not the whole street. Yes. Okay.
Yeah, it's, if you look at this property line, it's just to the center of the street to the edge.
Yeah.
Correct.
That was the only clarification that I wanted.
All right, any more questions? All right, thank you. Thank you for being here for questions.
Thank you.
And we're doing this tonight too, right?
No,
It's not tonight.
Yeah,
Okay. Yeah, probably. I don't know. Okay. All right, a closed session has been requested and it will be presented by Gary Millward.
Thank you, Chair. Maybe I should have just stayed up there. So I understand that a closed session has been requested. The purpose of that, as my discussion with the administration, is to discuss character and competency of an individual, which is one of the areas that's permitted under Utah Code Section 524205. So motion to close would be appropriate. Thank you.
Okay, I'll make a motion to close. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, seconded by Craig Christensen. We'll announce a motion of a closed session, seconded by Craig Christensen. We will do a verbal roll call.
Gary Garrett,
Yes, Gary Garrett.
Becky Bogdan. Catrice McKay, yes. Rachel Whipple,
Yes.
George Hanley,
Yes.
and Craig Christensen.
Yes.
And Travis.
Yes.
Travis, welcome. Okay.
Recording stopped.